So I know that we've done this one in black and white. I thought it might be nice to also see an edit in colour. So I'm going to do another video with this edited in colour. Now this was late afternoon. I've already talked about it in the other video. However, they were gorgeous children. There's not like much else to tell you except they're beautiful children. And obviously it was a late afternoon because you can see I'm shooting in 1000 ISO, which is really high for me. Anyway, so what we're going to do is I'm going to tint this mostly actually in Lightroom, and we'll go from there into Photoshop. Okay, so firstly I want to add in a little bit of warmth. Also make it a little bit more, I say green, so to speak. Then I'd like to actually minus the exposure a little. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want to bring up those highlights. So I'm going to also add some contrast. I'll add that about, let's do it to there. Alright, now it's looking a bit terrible at the moment, I understand that. Now we're going to go to the highlights, and I'm going to minus those because I would like to see some of the highlights. Let's leave it about there. And the shadows, let's put some shadows in. We definitely need some shadows back there. Okay, so I'm going to bring the whites all the way down. Alright, and the blacks. What can we do with the blacks? Let's put them... I think we need about there. Alright, so now I'm just going to go down to the tone curve, and in this square here I'm just going to lower it a little, just a touch. Okay, alright, now this is where it gets a little bit funky because I would like to change this a fair bit in here. So first of all, the greens, might that make that more of a yellow? Okay, and the oranges, I just need to get rid of those just in case a touch. There's not really any orange there. And the reds as well, there's not really any reds to speak of, so we'll just do this a little. And just in case, I'll minus them just a touch as well. Okay, blues, there's way too many blues there. So what I'm going to do is desaturate the blues down a little. And let's see what happens when I raise the luminance of those a bit. There we go. So I'm going to raise it so that the blues are brighter, because actually that's where they are. They're actually wearing a lot of blue. Okay, so now I'd like to go down to the split toning. And this is where we can have a little bit of fun. Just raise it a tiny touch. Raise the saturation just very slightly. And I'll move the balance down a bit of this. I actually really want it to more be about the shadows. Now, speaking of which, the shadows, I'm looking for, there we go, a warmth. I'm more happy with that. I might just bring this hue down a touch, maybe to about 30. Let's put it onto 30. And the saturation, maybe 24, we'll just drop it by 10. Alright, so now I've actually got a warmer image there without actually even taking it out of Lightroom. So now that we've done this, I also can add a little bit of a vignette. And I might, bring that into the mid-tones and the roundness and the feather. There it is. Okay. So now all I'd like to do is double click on the brush to bring everything back to normal. I'm going to raise the exposure a little in this direction. This is where the sun looks like it should be coming down. So from that direction, and then get a new brush and again just raise the exposure a little up there and through there. Again, that's where the sun should be coming down from. Okay, so we've done a fair bit here in Photoshop, in Lightroom without taking it into Photoshop. Now, I'm not sure about this, so I'm just going to play that green there. I feel like if I get rid of it, it's going to take away from the image. So in fact, rather than removing it, because my instinct tells me to, I'm actually going to do the opposite and embrace it and just also add it onto here. So I need to saturate that up a little, maybe add some warmth. Okay, so now even bring that up a little more. So now that I've really embraced that, I'm still not sure about it. I need to continue that theme on a little through here as well. I might work backwards. So it's just too contrast or too flat. So I've just made some contrast there. Alright. So at least now the grass matches, but is it too much? So again, I'm going to double click, and in the back area back here, I might just desaturate it a little. I'm not really sure what I'm doing. Like I said, I'm just playing, so I'll see how I go. But I'm just trying to draw the attention back onto the subjects and away from that grass so much. I don't mind it, but not quite so much. Okay. So I think that works a little better. Okay. So now I really wish that the color was more consistent back here. So what I'm going to do again is grab a new brush and just paint this on back here a little. Okay. I'm not too sure about that. It's not that I mind it, I'm just not sure. Okay. Alright. Okay, so let's see now how amazing Lightroom is, really. I think it's quite incredible how much you can do in Lightroom these days. And remember that I've done all this without harming those pixels at all. We've just moved the pixels around. And that's before and after in Lightroom. So now all I need to do is take that into Photoshop. So here we are in Photoshop, and I'm going to fiddle. To be honest with you, I could actually edit this a lot quicker by just simply selecting out to put some solid colour in there, and you'll see what I mean, fill it in with the colour and work on their skin tones and just the colour around them a little and flatten it, decontrast. However, I am going to fiddle for you just for educational purposes, and make sure if you do want to do it faster to just read the PDF, because I'll highlight the things that I think that could happen and make it happen a lot faster for you. Okay, so let's go from here. Okay, I'm just going to grab a color balance and add a little bit of warmth there with red and brown, red and yellow. Okay, now just let me have a think about what I might do with this image. I'd like to see what Photoshop thinks I should do. Now, I actually do this a fair bit if I'm unsure. So I just sat here and I thought, I'm not really sure what I should do. So I'm going to duplicate the background layer, grab this layer, Control-Alt-E, so I've got a new merge layer, and duplicate that just so that I have a working layer, and go edit, image, auto contrast. Okay, now I think that really works on the subjects, but not so much the background on all areas. So whilst I quite like that, I might make a mask of that. And remembering that was auto contrast, so I'm just going to now paint that off areas that I didn't want it. Okay. And in here, I didn't want it in here. Okay, so that's literally added contrast to the subjects, which actually is a bit helpful, because you do want them to stand out a little, I think, in an image like this. But is it too much? Okay, so now I'm going to go back to that layer, and I'm actually even going to lighten them just a touch. There we go. So I really think that actually helps a fair bit. Okay. Alright, now just to figure out what I really want to do here, I'm going to make a gradient that is a little warm. And I'm just going to reduce that down. Okay, so I don't want the green. Just looking at it, I think I'd prefer the reds. Okay, and now I'm going to erase off on the subject to begin with. Let's do that to start. So we've got a solid color. Sorry, not a gradient. That's a solid color. And I'm erasing off. Messy erase too. It doesn't need to be perfect. Now, I mean, you could stop at any point. How many times have you heard me say that? Really, how long is that piece of string? How long do you want to edit for? Okay, so you could go on and on and on editing. Okay, so all that's done is decontrast the background a little, and I'm just going to reduce that down. Now I can't decide if I really want that warm glow, so I'm going to now just go in and make it, I think the darker I go, the more I like it. So I think I'm going to, there we go, darken that. So now that it's darker, I do need to be careful. I have made some mistakes in here with the erase tool. Okay, there. Alright. Okay, so now I think we can actually do a hue saturation and saturate this right up. There we go. And I'm just going to erase that off on his face a little. Where's my brush? Their faces. And the jumpers. I actually like it on the horses' fur and everything there. Okay. There we go. Now, often you see everyone adding the glow at the top. You can do that. I don't know if it's that necessary here, but let's do that anyway. I think if I am going to do it, I did add a little bit of a yellow brush here. I'll just Control-Alt-E to merge it, and Control-J to work on it again. I think if I was going to do that, I'd prefer that maybe the rays a little rather than the glow. Okay, so let's see what we can come up with. So I might just grab the poly tool. Now the light is obviously coming down from this way, so I'm just going to poly in some rays. Actually, I think that's too angular, so I'll start again. So I might still kind of go around here, trying to keep the same angle, and you can actually see from the highlights where I'm trying to hit here. So this one would go kind of this way, and probably should be going like this. Okay. And okay. So, selection, modify, feather, to, layer, new layer. Okay. Edit, fill, foreground color. Okay, now. Filter, blur, Gaussian blur. And let's make that one a soft light. So I just did it to taste. Okay. There we go. And now if we do a select all, and now we add a gradient at the top. And we'll make this slightly more yellow. Press OK. Radial. Inverse. Actually, we won't inverse that. And press OK. We can now move it up here. Now let's group that so you can decide whether you like it or not. It's up to you. I'm just going to reduce it down a little. Okay, so it's barely there. Alright, now there is some things that I need to do. Let's get back on track here. Her hat. I made a little bit of a mess here. Whoops. So I'm going to reduce that feather. And just lighten that area here. Now this is where you could really spend some time. It really is up to you on how much time you would spend on something like this. You could go in and you can color paint in all sorts of detail here. Okay, so for example, let's do an example of what I mean. I might just raise the curves, Control I to inverse that. Okay, let me put this at the top. Oop. Okay, now I just need to move on. So I'm just going to grab the paintbrush and paint her hair alive here and here. And this is done really quickly, just an example for you to see what you can do. Okay. Now I'll just move that bit. Alright, so I've painted her hair alive there so that when you zoom out, you can actually see it a lot better. Now, because of the color that I did also here, when I added that color into the donkey, it's taken to it as well. So I might just do a slight hue saturation just there as well. Okay. Now you can do that by bringing out bringing out the jumper and all those kind of things. And let's say that I wanted to bring out this here. If I wanted to bring it out, I will make it a different color. Let's talk about that just for example. So I'm going to do a layer, new layer, and I'm going to make the mode color and press OK. Now I'm going to grab a brush and for interest's sake, let's just make it really bright orange. I'm going to recolor this in here. So you can tint or color anything that you want within a photograph. I actually prefer the red, so I will probably be taking this off, but you get the point. You can retint or color anything that you want within a photograph by doing that. So all I'm going to do is reduce that down a little. I prefer it red. Okay, so I'm going to leave that as is, and their skin tones are fine. I'm going to make a new layer. Layer. Actually, I'll Control Alt E. Oops, Control Alt E. Give me that. There is a reason. So I need a new top layer. Okay. Now I've talked about the plugin for portraiture before, and I just wanted to mention that I've got to put the light at the top because it hasn't merged. I just want to mention that because I do have the plugin. It's from Imagematic, and it grabs the skin tones and it blurs them, but it also can blur the background without having to actually do it yourself. Now, in other tutorials, I've taught you how to do all those kind of things. Now, Adobe Photoshop just took out the oil paint plugin. Now, there is another company that does that, and it's called Pixel Bender Accelerator. Now, if you look that up in Google, it'll come up. And if that's only if you want to use the oil filter plugin, and it's not in CC anymore because they've removed it. Basically because their technology doesn't cater for it anymore, so they just took it out. And I know a lot of photographers at the moment are using that. So I mean, there's got to be other oil filters plugins as well, but that's the one that Adobe themselves recommend, so that's the one I would use. Okay, so I've had to flatten this because it takes a lot of memory. So in order to show you, here we go. So as you can see, it actually adds in a few strokes. I'm not sure if you can see in the video. So all you need to do is remove the shine, and I put the scale all the way up, the cleanness up, and the stylizing up. And this is great for hair and for animals. Ironically, we have hair and animals in this photograph, but it also is good for backgrounds. But it does darken the image as well. So I'll press OK. Now, be careful because it's actually on their skin and everything. So I'd never, ever, ever just run it and leave it as is. That would turn it into an oil painting. So let's have a look and I'll show you what I mean. Okay. So first things first is I do want to reduce the opacity of that down. And I'm going to grab a brush and just remove it off their faces and off the important parts of the image. So where I want focus, I would remove it. Okay, here and through the grass here a little, where I need them to be standing. The plane or field in which they are standing. So that is basically similar to a Gaussian blur. It's the nowadays Gaussian blur, basically. And it blends the pixels and it makes the hair and everything a little bit nicer. Okay. Be careful when printing that too, it can be a bit weird. Okay, so it's actually darkened around them, but that's okay. I'm going to add a huge feather and very careful in my selection and just lighten that on them a touch. Okay, now I'll just Control J and duplicate that, Control Alt E and merge it again. Now the reason I'm doing that is because I do want to take out these power lines last but not least. Now, I've had a lot of fun fiddling with you with this one. I hadn't worked on it prior, so it's a literal fiddle kind of live, so to speak, to see what we can come up with, and I guess this is just one way to do it. Okay, I need to be careful with what's happening here. Alright. Put slight detail back there so it kind of looks like that was supposed to be that way. Now these areas back here, I like these little spots that have come up over this side. So I'm going to just grab that, paste, and we'll move that to the top. Edit, free transform. Be careful when doing this because the eye can tell pretty easily when you've done something like this. So I would cut it again. Okay, and just move it around a little to taste. Edit, paste, and up here as well. I wouldn't mind some detail back in there. It kind of was looking a bit weird, but I do want to lighten it. We are getting particularly particular right now. In all honesty, this isn't that necessary. Okay. Control-Alt-E to merge. And let's just grab a saturation sponge and saturate this area along here. Through here. It's worth saturating up, I think, because it's got a little bit of pizzazz to it. I don't want to saturate that ground though. Only in there where it's lacking, just there. Okay, last but not least, just some more red to that ground. And I'm going to do it, I think I'll do it on a bigger feather than that. How about 80? Okay. Color balance, let's do a mask actually. And certainly funny to start with a photo that really didn't need anything to end with doing a lot. Now we could actually bring pink back here too. We might actually do that. Just put some color back in her. Here. Okay. So that's color balance. Too much. Okay. There we go. Okay, so here we are back in Lightroom, and here's the pre-Lightroom version and after Lightroom, and like I said, you could stop there, and then we'll go back to the done file. I really hope that you've enjoyed this video.